Alex had never been in a place like this before. The city was large, crowded, and full of strange creatures. It was an alien world, and every corner seemed to pulse with an energy Alex couldn't understand. The buildings towered high above him, and the people, if they could even be called, that moved about in strange, elegant ways. Alex was a human, small and out of place. He had come to the city on a mission, but it wasn't a mission that would bring him any glory or fame. It was simply to observe, learn, and return home. The people in the city weren't used to humans. Most humans had never traveled so far from Earth, yet Alex found himself here, a lone figure in the middle of the crowd. He tried to stay invisible, but it was hard. The city's inhabitants were always looking, always watching. There were no friendly faces here, just curious eyes that regarded him with suspicion. As Alex walked through the marketplace, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the attention on him. Strange, colorful creatures walked by, some on four legs, others floating in the air. Their voices echoed in a language Alex couldn't understand, but he didn't need to. Their eyes told him everything he needed to know. You don't belong here. He adjusted the collar of his jacket, trying to blend in, kept his head low and his hands in his pockets, walking quickly past the alien stalls. He didn't have the time or the energy to shop or explore. He had to stay focused on his goal, find out what the alien leaders were planning, and leave as soon as possible. Alex didn't want to get involved in any politics or war. That's exactly what he found himself in. He had come here as a diplomat, not a fighter, yet his mission was far from peaceful. It had been months of preparation and travel. Now he was standing in a city filled with strange creatures, all while being watched by who knew how many guards. Then, just as he thought he could escape into the shadows, something caught his attention. There was a crowd gathering in the center of the square. The sound of whispers filled the air as everyone turned to watch something. Alex slowed his pace, curious about what was happening. He tried to slip into the crowd unnoticed, but he couldn't help himself. Standing in the center of the square was a figure that commanded attention. It wasn't the usual towering aliens Alex had seen before. This one was different. A young woman, tall and regal, with a presence that made even the most powerful warriors look small. She walked through the crowd, her eyes scanning the area with sharp focus, moving past the other alien creatures as if they were nothing more than obstacles. The air around her seemed to shift as she moved, her every step sending ripples of power. Through the crowd, Alex's heart skipped a beat as she came closer. He had heard stories about her, the princess of this world. She was the most powerful figure in the city, the leader of a powerful faction that controlled most of the resources. But to Alex, she was just another mysterious figure, someone whose power and status didn't matter to him. Still, there was something about her. It wasn't just her beauty or her grace. It was the way she carried herself, like she belonged to this world in a way that no one else did. People stepped aside for her, and Alex couldn't help but watch as she approached. The center of the square she walked with purpose, ignoring the whispers and stares. And then, without warning, her eyes found him. Alex froze. Her gaze pierced through him like a knife. There was no mistakes. She had seen him. The crowd quieted as she stopped, standing still in front of him. The guards behind her tightened their grip on their weapons, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. But the princess didn't move. She only stared at Alex, her expression unreadable. For a moment, there was silence, just the sound of Alex's heart pounding. In his chest, he could feel the weight of her gaze on him, and he suddenly felt very small. Why was she looking at him? He had done nothing special to draw her attention. He was just an ordinary human, out of place in this world of strange creatures. The princess tilted her head slightly, as if considering something, and then she spoke. "You," she said, her voice cold but clear, carrying a command that made the whole square fall into an even deeper silence. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know what to say. Why was she speaking to him? He had never been addressed by someone like her before, let alone a princess. Her voice, smooth and powerful, cut through the air again. "You human, come with me." Alex blinked, completely shocked by the request. What did she mean by that? Why was she calling him out in front of everyone? Is this some kind of mistake? Excuse me? He finally managed to stammer, his mind racing. Without a hint of hesitation, the princess stepped forward. The guards tried to stop her, but she waved them away with a simple gesture, and they obeyed. She was used to power, to being obeyed without question. "You will come with me," she repeated, her eyes never leaving his. "It is not a request." Alex's mouth went dry. He had no idea what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change. He had never imagined being this close to such power, to someone who controlled so much of the fate of this world. But there she was, standing before him, commanding him with nothing more than a glance. Before he could speak again, she turned away and began walking toward a nearby building, expecting him to follow. Her guards moved in formation behind her, still wary of Alex, but unwilling to challenge her. The princess didn't glance back, but Alex had no choice but to follow. As he walked in her footsteps, the crowd parted, and the whispers began again. What was going on? Why had the princess chosen him? But the questions were the last thing on Alex's mind as he followed her, knowing that his life was no longer just his own. Alex's heart raced as he followed the princess through the crowded streets. His mind was a blur of confusion, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, something that he wasn't ready for. The people around him watched in silence as the princess led the way, her presence commanding respect from everyone in sight. Alex had no idea why she had chosen him. Was it a mistake? Had he done something to earn her attention? The guards were close behind, their eyes never leaving Alex. He could feel their suspicion, their distrust, but the princess didn't seem to care. She walked with such confidence, so sure of herself, that it was hard for Alex to question her. He had never been in the company of someone so powerful, so important. Everything about her was different. Her manner, her calm, effortless control over everything around her. They reached a tall, impressive building that looked as if it had been carved from stone. The architecture was grand, with sharp angles and intricate designs, making it look like a fortress. Alex had no time to appreciate the beauty of the structure. He was too focused on the woman in front of him. Without a word, the princess stepped inside the building, her guards following. Alex hesitated for a moment, but then forced himself to follow, unable to resist the pull of the situation. What was he supposed to do now? He had no idea. Inside, the air was cool and quiet. The walls were lined with sculptures, paintings, and strange artifacts that Alex couldn't recognize. There were no windows, just dim lights that cast shadows across the room. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with a sense of history and power. It felt like a place where secrets were kept, where deals were made in the dark. The princess led him to a large table in the center of the room, where several high-ranking officials were sitting. They all looked up as she entered, their eyes flicking toward Alex with curiosity and surprise. The princess didn't acknowledge them. She simply took a seat at the head of the table and gestured for Alex to sit beside her. "What is this about?" Alex asked, finally finding his voice. His confusion was growing, and he needed answers. "Why'd you bring me here? I'm just a human. I don't belong here." The princess's eyes locked onto his. For the first time, Alex saw something other than calm and control in her gaze, a flicker of something deeper, something more vulnerable. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "You are not just a human, Alex," she said, her voice steady but intense. "You are the one I need, the one I have been looking for." Alex blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean? Why me? There are plenty of people here who are much more qualified than I am." The princess leaned forward, her fingers lightly tapping the table. "It's not about qualifications. It's about something more important. You may not understand yet, but you have something the others do not. Something that makes you the perfect person for the job." "Job," Alex repeated, his mind racing. "What Job?" The princess didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her attention to the officials sitting around the table. They exchanged looks, their faces unreadable. It was clear that whatever it was happening, it wasn't something the others were fully prepared for either, you see. The princess continued, There are threats to my kingdom, and I cannot face them alone. My enemies are powerful, and they are closing in. I have no choice but to act quickly. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. What does that have to do with me? She paused for a moment, considering her words carefully. I need someone. Who can protect me? Someone who isn't tied to the politics of this world. You may not understand the full scope of what's happening, but I need you to be my protector. You are the only one I trust. Alex was speechless. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had come here to observe, to learn, not to get involved in royal politics or power struggles. He was just a man from Earth, far from home. Yet here he was being asked to protect a princess he barely knew, in a world he couldn't even understand. I'm not a soldier, he said, his voice shaky. I don't know how to fight, how to protect anyone. You've made a mistake. Princess shook her head. It's not about fighting, Alex. It's about strength of character. You are different. You are not bound by the same expectations that tie the others here. You see the world through a different lens, and that makes you exactly what I need. Alex looked around at the officials, who were now watching him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The weight of their gazes was unbearable, and he shifted in his seat, unsure of what to say or do next. He wasn't ready for this. He had no training, no experience. He didn't belong here, but as the princess's words sank in, something inside him shifted. He could feel the responsibility weighing on him. This wasn't just about protecting Hurt. It was about something bigger, something that could change everything. I don't know if I can do this, Alex said quietly. You don't have to know, the princess replied. You just have to try, and I will be here to guide you. I'm not asking you to be perfect, just to be there when it matters. The room was silent as Alex processed her words. He had no idea what he was getting into, but one thing was clear. Had no choice but to follow her. There was something in her eyes, something that told him she wasn't asking out of arrogance or power. She was asking because she needed him. I'll do it, Alex said finally. His voice steady despite the uncertainty still swirling inside him. But I need to know what I'm up against. I need to understand why you need me. The princess nodded. And you will. But for now, we must prepare. There is little time. As she spoke, Alex realized that his life had just changed forever. He had been thrust into a world far beyond anything he had imagined, and now there was no turning back. The days that followed were a blur for Alex. The princess had given him a task, one he never asked for, but now it was his responsibility. He tried to tell himself that he was just following orders, that he wasn't really involved in anything. Big, but deep down, he knew he couldn't hide from the reality. The princess, whose name was now familiar to him. Maria had a quiet way of demanding respect. Every moment spent in her company only reminded Alex of how different this world was from his own. The palace was filled with luxury, its halls echoing with the sounds of footsteps, distant conversations, and the occasional soft whispers of servants. He had been shown to a small private room in the palace, where he was given a uniform and told to make himself ready. Ready for what, though? That was the question that kept running through his mind. The guards, despite their silent watchfulness, never seemed to speak to him. They followed Arya's orders with perfect discipline. And while they didn't seem to trust him, they didn't question the princess's decision. The atmosphere in the palace had changed ever since he had arrived, as though the entire place was preparing for something terrible, something unavoidable. Arya spent her days in meetings, talking to the council, making plans, and organizing strategies. Alex was always nearby, watching, learning, but feeling increasingly out of place. He had never been trained for anything like this. What was he supposed to do? Stand in the shadows and look tough? He wasn't even sure if he looked tough. Alone, capable of protecting someone as important as the princess. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city outside, Alex found himself sitting alone in the hallway. He had been pacing back and forth, trying to clear his head, when Arya appeared. She wasn't accompanied by her guards, and for the first time, she looked like a normal person. It's not the leader of a vast kingdom. She was dressed simply, her regal clothing replaced by something more comfortable. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders in soft waves. "You've been avoiding me," Arya said quietly, her voice soft but carrying the weight of someone who expected honesty. Alex looked up, surprised by her sudden appearance. "I'm not avoiding you. I'm just trying to figure things out. This is all so new to me." Arya studied him for a moment, her gaze intense, but not unkind. "I understand. You didn't ask for this, but it is happening." "Understand that." "I don't understand why you need me," Alex said, his voice tinged with frustration. "You have guards, soldiers, people trained to protect you. Why me?" Arya's expression softened, and she took a step closer. "Because they only see what's in front of them. They see a leader to protect, a figurehead to shield. But you," she paused, searching for the right words, "you see the world differently. You're not bound by the same rules. Human. And that gives you something they can't offer me." Alex frowned, still confused. "What does being human have to do with anything?" "I'm just a person. I don't have any special abilities." Arya smiled slightly. "You might not think so, but you do. You have a way of looking at things that isn't clouded by power or fear. I've seen it. I need that right now." Turned, walking toward the balcony, and Alex followed. The city below was quiet, the streets emptying as the evening grew late. The lights from the buildings flickered like distant stars, and for a brief moment, Alex felt like he wasn't part of this world at all. He felt small again, like the outsider he had been when he first arrived. But Arya didn't seem to notice the distance in his eyes. She stood at the edge of the balcony, gazing out into the night. "Do you know why I've brought you here?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper, carried away by the wind. Alex hesitated before answering. "Because you need protection?" "Think I'm the only one who can do it?" Arya nodded, but there was more in her answer than just that. "Yes, I need protection. But it's not just from enemies who want to hurt me. It's from everything that's about to change. You're here because I trust you. But also because I believe you can see the bigger picture. You can see beyond what's right in front of you." Alex looked at her, his mind racing. He had never been good at trusting anyone, let alone someone who held so much power. And yet he couldn't deny that there was something in her eyes, something real, something that made him want to believe her. He glanced back at the empty streets below, trying to make sense of his new reality. But what if I'm not enough? What if I fail? "You won't fail," she said with certainty. "You're stronger than you think, Alex. We all are. But you need to trust yourself, just like I trust you." The words hung in the air for a moment. Alex didn't know what to say. He had never been one to trust easily, and now here he was, standing beside a princess, asked to protect her from an unknown threat. What if he wasn't up to the task? What if he was just a pawn in someone else's game? "I'll try," Alex said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I'll try." Arya turned to face him, her gaze softening. "That's all I ask." As the night stretched on, Alex stood beside her, the weight of his new role pressing down on him. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing for sure: his life would never be the same again. The days that followed were filled with tension. Alex could feel it in the air, thick like the weight of a storm about to break. He spent more time with Arya, learning about the kingdom's politics and the dangers that were creeping closer with every passing moment. Still, there was a sense of uncertainty hanging over him. He'd been brought here to protect her, but protect her from what? The more Alex observed, the more he realized that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Arya's calm demeanor hid something deeper, knowledge of impending danger that made her act with such urgency. She didn't just need a bodyguard. She needed someone who could see beyond the surface, someone who could think quickly in the face of the unknown. One evening, after yet another meeting with her council, Arya summoned Alex to her private chambers. It was late and the palace was quiet, the halls empty, except for the occasional guard standing at attention. Alex made his way through the long corridors, the sound of his footsteps echoing as he approached her door. When he knocked, she called for him to enter. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the flickering light casting shadows on the walls. Arya was standing by the window, looking out over the city. She didn't turn when Alex entered, but he could feel the weight of her thoughts in the air. Alex, she said softly, I have something to tell you. Something you need to know. Alex stepped forward, his mind racing with possibilities. He had been expecting something like this. She had been acting strange lately, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding back. What's going on? He asked, his voice steady, but filled with concern. What aren't you telling me? Arya turned to face him then, her eyes heavy with something that wasn't fear but something close to it. She seemed almost ... tired. There are enemies. In the kingdom, she began, her voice quiet but firm. Not just the ones you've seen. It's the ones I've kept hidden, for the sake of the people. Alex frowned. Hidden enemies? What do you mean? Arya walked toward the center of the room, where a large map of the kingdom was spread across. A table, she pointed to a region far to the north, an area Alex had never heard of before. This region, she said, was once part of my family's territory. But years ago, we lost it to a rival faction, and since then, it's been in the hands of those who want to destroy everything we've built. Alex leaned in to study the map. So, this region is still under enemy control? Yes, Arya replied, but they've been gathering strength in secret. I've had spies watch them for years, but the reports are inconsistent. The danger is growing, and I don't know how long we can avoid open war. Alex felt his stomach tighten. What? Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why keep it hidden? Because I didn't want to burden you, Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. You have enough to handle already. But now, the time has come. We can't avoid it any longer. The threat is real. There was a long silence as Alex processed the information. He hadn't expected this. He thought he had been hired to protect Arya from the usual political dangers, assassins, rivals, or perhaps a little espionage here and there. But this was a war waiting to happen. I'll do whatever it takes to help, Alex said. Finally, his voice steady. But we need a plan. We can't just rush into this without knowing who we're up against. Arya's eyes softened slightly and she nodded. I agree. That's why I need you to do something for me. Something only you can do. Alex raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I need you to go to the north, she said, her voice now filled with determination. Need you to infiltrate the enemy's stronghold and bring back information. We can't fight what we don't understand. Alex's jaw tightened. You want me to go alone? Yes, she said, her gaze unwavering. You're the only one who can move through their ranks without drawing attention. I trust you, Alex. You're the only one who can do this. Alex took a deep breath. He didn't want to go. The idea of stepping into enemy territory alone, not knowing what he would face, filled him with dread. But there was something in Arya's eyes, something that told him this was the only way. She was trusting him with the future of her kingdom. With the fate of her people. I'll go, he said quietly. No, but you need to know, I might not make it back. Arya stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. I know the risks. But I believe in you, Alex. You are stronger than you think. The weight of her words settled on him as he stood there, trying to process everything. He had no idea how he was going to survive this mission, let alone succeed, but he couldn't. Back down now. He had come too far, and Arya was counting on him. As he turned to leave, Arya's voice stopped him. Be careful, she said, her voice softer now. And remember, you're not alone. No matter what happens, you are part of this. Alex nodded, the words echoing in his mind as he walked out of her chambers and into the quiet hallways of the palace. He was about to enter a dangerous world, one that he had never imagined. But there was no turning back now. The mission was set, and he was the only one who could carry it out. The morning after Arya's request. Alex found himself standing at the gates of the palace, ready to embark on the mission that could change everything. His heart raced in his chest, but he tried to steady his breathing. This wasn't a mission, like anything he had faced before. It wasn't about diplomacy or observation. It was about survival. And it was about loyalty. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft golden light over the city, Alex packed the few supplies he had been given: a map, some food, a knife, and a few other tools. But the most important thing wasn't the supplies. It was the trust Arya had placed in him. He hadn't asked for this responsibility, yet here he was, about to cross into enemy territory with nothing more than his wits, his will to succeed. The palace was silent as he made his way to the gate, his footsteps echoing in the quiet morning. The guards stood at attention, but none spoke to him. They all knew what he was about to do, but they had been given no orders to stop him. The princess's word was law, and she had given him her trust. That was more than enough to get him through. As he reached the gates, a familiar figure appeared beside Himeria. She stood there in silence, her face unreadable. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. The weight of the moment hung between them, unspoken. "I won't fail you," Alex said quietly, his voice filled with determination. He wasn't sure if he believed it, but he had to say it, for her and for himself. Arya nodded slowly. "I know you won't." Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of something deeper in her eyes. "But you have to be careful. The enemy is cunning. They won't make it." "Easy for you. I'll be careful," Alex promised. "I'll find out what they're planning and get back to you." She stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm and reassuring. "Remember, Alex, you're not just doing this for me. You're doing this for the kingdom. For everyone who depends on us." Alex nodded, the weight of her words settling in his mind. This wasn't just a test of loyalty to Arya. This was a test of loyalty to everything she represented. If he failed, it wouldn't just be her life. At risk it would be the lives of countless others. He turned and began walking toward the exit, the city gates looming ahead of him. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but there was no turning back now. He had made his choice. As he crossed the threshold of the palace gates, the familiar sounds of the city faded behind him. The quiet of the open road stretched out in front of him, and he could feel the weight of the unknown pressing in. What would he find once he reached the enemy stronghold? What dangers awaited him? His steps were measured as he made his way through the land, moving carefully and staying hidden when necessary. His mission was simple: to gather information. But as he continued on his journey, he realized how little he knew about what he was truly up against. The road was long and treacherous, winding through forests and valleys. Every step felt heavy, like the earth beneath him was pressing down with the weight of what was to come. Alex knew he couldn't afford to make a mistake. One wrong move, and the mission would fail. After several days of travel, Alex finally arrived at the outskirts of the enemy's territory. The landscape here was harsh rocky hills, dense forests, and no signs of life. The air was colder, and the silence was oppressive. It was clear that the enemy wanted to remain hidden to avoid being detected. But Alex had a job to do, he found. A safe spot to camp for the night, hidden beneath the cover of trees. His fire was small, just enough to keep him warm, and he kept a sharp eye on the horizon, watching for any movement. Every sound made him tense. Every rustle of leaves, every distant noise made his heart race faster. He couldn't afford to be caught off guard. The night passed uneventfully, and by the morning, Alex was ready to move again. He had come this far, and now it was time to get to the heart of the enemy's stronghold. He had to learn everything. He could, and he had to do it without getting caught. As he approached the enemy's base, Alex took extra precautions. He moved like a shadow, staying out of sight, using the landscape to his advantage. The stronghold loomed ahead, a fortress built into the side of a mountain. It was more fortified than he had imagined. There were guards everywhere, patrolling. The walls, keeping watch over the entrance. Alex had to find another way in. He wasn't stupid enough to try and force his way through the front. He circled the perimeter of the base, looking for any sign of weakness, any hidden entrance that would allow him to slip inside unnoticed. Hours passed as he scouted the area. And just when he thought he had no choice but to turn back, he found a small, unguarded tunnel leading into the base. It was hidden beneath a pile of rocks, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't looking for it. Alex's heart beat faster. As he squeezed through the narrow tunnel, his mind focused on thinking the information he needed. The tunnel opened into a dark corridor inside the stronghold. Alex moved carefully, keeping to the shadows as he made his way deeper into the base. Every step brought him closer to the heart of the enemy's plans. He could feel the tension building, the weight of the mission pressing down on him with every step. He had to succeed. There was no other option. The deeper Alex ventured into the enemy stronghold, the more he could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. Its every turn, every shadow felt like a potential threat. His senses were on high alert, and he moved as quietly as possible. Blending into the dark corners of the base, the air inside was cold, and the silence was unsettling. But Alex couldn't afford to hesitate. The mission had to succeed. He had to gather information, and he had to do it quickly. His footsteps echoed softly in the long corridors as he crept deeper into the stronghold. The walls were made of cold stone, and there was an eerie calm that hung in the air. I had no idea what kind of enemies he would encounter, but he knew they were dangerous. The princess had warned him about how cunning they could be, but even then he couldn't have fully understood what he was up against. After hours of navigating the winding halls, Alex found himself in front of a large, reinforced door. There were no guards in sight, but he knew that wouldn't last for long. This was at the heart of the enemy's plans. If there was any chance of uncovering what they were planning, this was the place. Alex took a deep breath and pushed the door open slowly, hoping it wouldn't creak too loudly. Inside, he found a room filled with maps, documents, and strange technology he couldn't quite recognize. The room was lit by dim, flickering lights, casting long shadows across the walls. At the far end of the room stood a large table covered in plans and blueprints. It looked like the perfect place to find the information he needed. Alex moved quickly, his eyes scanning the papers and charts on the table. Most of it was in a language he didn't understand. But there were a few words he could make out: attack, betrayal, takeover. His stomach tightened as he realized the enemy wasn't just planning an invasion. They were planning to overthrow Arya, to take control of her kingdom from within. He picked up one of the documents, his hands trembling slightly as he read. The more he looked, the clearer it became. The enemy had been waiting for the right moment to strike, and they had already infiltrated Arya's closest allies. They had been working in the shadows for months, preparing to betray her when the time was right, Alex. The voice that interrupted his thoughts sent a chill down his spine. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. Standing in the doorway was a figure he never expected to see, a familiar face from the palace. It was one of Arya's trusted advisors, a man named Darius. Alex had known Darius for months, and he had always seemed loyal to the princess. But now, seeing him standing in the enemy stronghold, Alex felt the ground beneath him begin to shift. "Are you doing here?" Alex demanded, his voice low but firm. He couldn't afford to show any weakness, not now. Darius stepped into the room, a cold smile on his face. "What do you think I'm doing here, Alex?" he asked, his tone dripping. With disdain. "I've been working with them all along. We were never meant to succeed." Alex's heart dropped as the truth began to sink in. Darius wasn't a loyal advisor. He was one of the enemies, a traitor to Arya and everything she stood for. "Don't believe you," Alex said, though his voice wavered. He couldn't accept what he was hearing. Couldn't believe that someone he trusted had been working against them all this time. Darius chuckled darkly. "Believe whatever you want, Alex. It doesn't matter now. You've seen too much. The only thing left is to make sure you don't leave this place alive." Alex's mind raced. He had to act fast. Couldn't let Darius or the enemy win. Without thinking, he grabbed the nearest object, a heavy piece of metal, and swung it toward Darius. The blow caught him off guard, knocking him to the floor. But Darius quickly recovered, his eyes burning with anger. "You're making a mistake," Darius snarled, pulling a knife from his belt. "You think you can stop us? You're nothing but a human. You can't fight against us." Alex didn't have time to argue. He had to survive, and that meant using every advantage he had. He backed away, his mind racing as he searched for a way out. He couldn't stay in the room with Darius for much longer. He needed to get back to the palace and warn Arya. With one final push of strength, Alex charged at Darius, knocking him off balance long enough to grab a nearby rope. He tied Darius up quickly, his hands shaking as he worked. He wasn't sure how long it would hold, but it was enough to give him a head start. Without another word, Alex ran, sprinted down the hall, his heart pounding as he moved through the base. The sound of footsteps behind him told him he wasn't alone. The enemy was coming, and they weren't going to let him leave easily. Alex didn't stop. He pushed through the pain in his legs, the burning in his chest. His only thought was to get back to the princess, to get this information to her before it was too late. He reached the entrance of the stronghold, just as the guards began to close in. With a burst of energy, Alex darted through the exit and into the night, the cold air hitting his face like a slap. He didn't stop running until he could no longer hear the sound of pursuit. The world around him was silent as he made his way back to the palace. The danger was far from over, but for the first time, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. He had uncovered the truth. He had seen the enemy's plans. And now, it was up to him to stop them.